Hello بچه‌ها، خوش اومدید and welcome to this Tuesday stream of Las Plumas de Simur. My name is Plumas and I'm going to be your guide. Because yes, today I'm not going to be just a host, but a guide for we're going for a stroll into the Mesopotamian Garden. I know this is a topic some of you have been expecting for quite a while, and now it's finally here. Hello Serapis, hello, all the priestess is here. Therefore we shall continue. We've been blessed by the deities. And I'm pretty sure she's going to have a lot to say about this topic. It is possible that she knows even more than I do, but you know, we're here to share and to learn together. It is of my great pleasure being here today. This is a stream I've been wanting to do for quite a while. And hello, Christian. Duck fed. I like it. I like that. Duck feathers. I like that. Yeah, keep that one up. And I'm excited because it's not very well often that we get to know what the nature and vegetal world, just the landscape in history-related matters, so to speak. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more in just a second, but I just keep in mind that I'm really excited, and I think we need to pay more attention to not just the political, social context of history, but also the environmental context of it, because it plays just a very fundamental part in the development of history. So yes, today we're talking about Mesopotamian Gardens, and I love that you put that, because I just like naming Mesopo everything. That's it. I that's the kind of person that I am. Shout out to my dear patrons, especially those of Tier Murshid and Tier Ashdod. This topic is here today because they chose this topic in the poll, that because I don't know if you, I feel like I say this a lot, but hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. I can say that again. If you support me on Patreon, you can choose the topics coming to these live streams. And if you want to do so, you can check patreon.com/lastplumas all together. And I'm pretty sure there must be a tier for you. Thank you to my dear Murshid and my dear Ashdod. If you feel that during this stream, I am a little bit floppier than usual and a little bit more out in the clouds, is because I've been dealing with the not so great headache for the entire day. I'm feeling better now. This is the reason I am doing the stream. But if you see me a little bit like, you know, outwardly more than usual, because this is a supernatural based channel, spare me a thought. I'm just very human. So hello, Bertus. I didn't see you there. Hi. Iblis team. I think you mean Iblis as in the demon? Like Iblis in the Shahnameh? Because if so, at least in the transliterated version, you would spell it with an I or two E's for it to be Iblis. If not, it's a little bit like Iblis, and if that's what you're referring to. Yeah, so either I or double E to be like Iblis, that sound. If not, it's something we read it like Iblis or something like that. It's not wrong, but it's not the closest use. Like, it's not the most common use of the word. At the end of the day, feel free to type it whatever way you like it. So I wanted to start this live stream with what I'm trying to put the proper words. This is not scripted. I mean, can you tell? But you know, I have very good friends, two of them particularly, and they are dedicated to the study of nature, to landscape, and to the environment through history. And learning from them, the two brilliant women, and seeing their work and learning from them has given me so much to think about, because as I was saying before, we pay attention mostly to human affairs, which is fair given that we are learning history and art history, and then we move on to buildings, and we move on to societies and policies and conflict and everything that is human derived. I'm not saying this is a wrong approach, but we tend to forget about the natural world very often, very, very often. I, for example, work with animals on my thesis, and they are mainly forgotten. But then if you look at plants, at mountains, rivers, hilltops, islands, and their relationship with humans, that unless there is some kind of what we consider to be important connection between them, they're normally out of the picture. And if you think of it, the landscape affects so powerfully the societies dwelling in them. It's just a fundamental part of the development of a society, of a culture, so it should not be left aside. And this is, even though we're not talking about wildlife today, not the wilderness, we are bringing plants and wildlife to the front line, because today we are going to talk about gardens and their conception in Mesopotamia, what kinds and types were there, what did they mean, if they meant anything at all. And I just want to give that's just tiny food for thought. Stretching my back as always. It's just a little bit of a food for thought thing, and I just want to reflect on that. Why is that, Bertus? That Iblis, have a cookie I made, and don't worry about your shoulders. I shan't skip it, as much as I am excited to adopt 2 beautiful snake pets. I had to decline. I have to decline that offer, but maybe next week, maybe next month. Keep on trying. I mean, don't lose your good faith. So as I was saying before, we are talking about the impact of gardens in Mesopotamian society, and as always, you know the drill, but I feel it's important to say again, hello, Lucía. You've been awaited so much. You've been waited for and wished on this topic, because I know how much you like plants and wildlife in general. As I was saying, when we talk about Mesopotamia, what do we really mean? Not much, apart from a geographical position, but we are going to be focusing especially in Assyrian and Babylonian sources, because they are the ones I worked the most with when preparing for this article. If you want, I can give you a list of references for you to check out later. But yeah, mainly in this case, it's going to be Assyrian and Babylonian gardens and Babylonian sources. We're going to travel a little bit further and wider through the stream, but be aware, as we always comment, that the Fertile Crescent and what we call Mesopotamia implicates millennia of history and different societies and different cultures. So nothing that we can explain stays. That's a very poor phrasing. Things change a lot, to say it bluntly, and do not take for granted that what I am saying, it worked for the Assyrians, works the same for the Babylonians, for the Sumerians. Things vary and change a lot, and depending on the moment and the time. Do you remember what I used to say a lot about context? Because I realize I don't say it that often anymore, and I should, because it's something I stand by, I do believe in. Context is fundamental. Context is knowing what and when and where, in order to understand why. I think that's crucial when you're approaching any historical topic. And let's just not pause it anymore. Let's just wait any longer for it. Let's go to the Mesopotamian Garden. Allow me to be your escort and guide. And I think we are going to start with very, I'm not going to say typical, but very well-known image, which is this relief of the gardens of Nineveh. This relief was made during the reign of King Asurbanipal. And I cannot stay with you today. I'll be on the shadow hearing. Like a good gin you are. The Lucía is actually a gin. Interesting turn of events, but I cannot say I'm surprised. I was actually expecting that to happen if I ever had to have a Lucía. Hey, Aina! You made it! Do you remember the chat do you remember the chat that I just mentioned, that I am inspired and in constant learning from two brilliant women that dedicate their lives to the study of nature and landscape? Aina is certainly one of them. So I'm very humbled, a little bit nervous that she's here, but yes, you'll be lurking while packing. Where, you know what? I'll call you later so you can tell me what you packing for. Something that does not surprise me either. So I want to start with this image, which is a relief that was found in the Palace of Asurbanipal, made in the 9th century before Common Era. And unless I specify it, every day that I'm giving to you are going to be before Common Era. Gardens. Gardens have always been a way of mimicking and imagine paradise in this fleeting existence that we humans live. And they were places of retreatment, contemplation, pleasure, and they're also places to seek refuge in when the weight of the world are a little bit too heavy. At least that is the romanticized idea and notion that we find in many 19th century novels, and it has lasted till our days. Whenever we think of a garden, mainly positive feelings arise. But for Mesopotamian civilizations, especially for Babylonians and Assyrians, gardens held special significance, one that went beyond just terrestrial pleasure, because a garden was a symbol of power, a direct reflection of the territory the kings controlled and ruled upon. It could also be a place for leisure, of course, and for relaxing, for chilling under a palm tree and forgetting about the worries of daily life. For some people that is, because today we are going to see that significant and see how it was built and how these famous gardens created one of the best known legendary locations of ancient history, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. A little bit of Orientalism for your Tuesday afternoon. Never hurt nobody. And of course, you're going to expect a lot of plants here. Not in the thorough botanical, insightful analysis that I know would love, but I'm doing my best. I'm just an art historian. And since we're talking about gardens, we must see before what nature was around the urban centers that sprouted all along the Fatty Crescent. And for that, we need a map. Maps are important. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. This is a map of the Fatty Crescent. I'm drinking some tea with lemon. I put lemon on it because the tea is not that nice, but with the lemon though. So, as I was saying, this is a map of the Fatty Crescent. In there, you can see, maps are always important. Yes, they are. You can see the two main protagonists of Mesopotamia, which are the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. And you can spot those three dots gathered together, forming little triangles. Those are main cities. And you can see the first thing that calls the eye and your attention mostly is that all the cities, not all of them, many cities were built nearby in the proximity of river banks, and that already gives away a lot of information. It's really important to know the landscape and to be aware of what the situation was, because I will say again, you know the drill. We need context. We need to know when and where to understand why. Thus, welcome to the Fatty Crescent, the land between two rivers. In the forecast today, we can expect little, very little rain. And that means natural vegetation tends to be poor and concentrated in the marshes surrounding the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And also temperatures can skyrocket, and the heat can be difficult to bear without a proper resting area. Why is that of importance? Because it explains two important factors about garden construction. First, Irrigation is key to make them work. Surprise, plants need water. Mind-blowing, I know. And second, they are spaces that provide with things deemed important. Shade, fresh water, cooler temperatures. Building a garden was a result of hard work and thought. And this is one of the reasons they became not only a symbol of status, but also a symbol of civilization. Because civilized societies could tame the hostile environment and make it behave as they wished. And you can see how perfectly this works as a metaphor for power. Let's see some other gardens. What do you think? What about this one? I will show you this one. I want to show you. I have so many images, like nothing to be. Oh, because I have. All right. I can't show you this one. Wait. All right. We're going to see, mostly these reliefs come from the Palace of Azerbaijan. I will specify when they do not. But this is actually a relief showing different trees and servants, and you can spot the lion in the lower third. I really like this lion, like, a lot. And it's really significant that it's not fighting or dead even, it's alive. We will go there in a bit. As I was saying, building a garden, designing a garden was the exercise of literally modifying the space you were given and turning it into something else. That's powerful. It's similar to building a city, sure, since you are including modifications too, but gardens go a step further. You were changing nature itself. Literally, the trees, the animals, the running waters, they grow where you want them to grow. They run when you have previously established they will run. And as I mentioned before, a dependable source of water is fundamental to make the gardens work. So there is, this is what we're going to talk about first. Hello, Nicola. This is where everything is going to begin. Everything began with it, and it shall continue this way. We are talking about water. And this is where the Assyrians come to play, mostly. The Assyrian Empire had experienced difficulties due to severe climatic conditions, and quoting the words of the scholar Donald Patrick, the Assyrians were unable to recover for over a century and a half. This is the reason we can find literature where they are referred as the Assyrian and the Neo-Assyrian Empire. What happened? What happened in the gap? What happened there? Major disaster, to put it in short. I'm going to show you another. I'm going to show you another garden. This is also from the. We're going to come and go through these images for a while. These are the lions of the Palace of Azerbaijan, and again, you can see different trees, different fruits. Even a flower is over there, and the lions are resting. They're resting. They're going about their day. Spoiler, major disaster. Yeah, that's basically how can we summarize it. Some written evidence from the reign of Tiglath-Pileser I from around 1082 before Common Era. These letters speak about drought, famine, crop failure, and scholars like Patrick, McAdams, and Wilkinson explain that the Assyrians had a sense of history. That means they were aware of the need for an independent system for irrigation, and they understood how important that was for their source of power not to fall again, and they were not going to allow that. It was a matter of agricultural prosperity for sure, but also, you see, because the Assyrian is a very much military-oriented empire, so in order to maintain your forces and your army, you need to feed them. You need agricultural prosperity, but also to control possible floods, because the Tigris and the Euphrates, they went a little bit wild many times in the year, and these dependable irrigation systems, these dependable water sources could help you control those rivers. And ultimately, this control over water would allow to build gardens and public spaces. Remember, reshaping the landscape, showing off your might. Mess up our rivers, exactly. Thus, the Assyrian kings built canals and irrigation systems that provided their cities with a continuous supply of living water. It is worth mentioning Sennacherib and his engineers, and also, why not, the incredible amount of people with severely affected health conditions due to poor working conditions. But, I just feel it's really important to be aware of the consequences of massive engineering work at this point in history. Gardens are mainly, this is from the Palace of Sargon in Dur-Sharrukin. This is not from Nineveh, this is from Dur-Sharrukin. Gardens are mainly an urban phenomenon, that's for certain. Only within the safety of a city wall such a thing could be conceived. And something I want to tell you is that there was more than just one garden. Stephanie Daly divided the gardens we could find in ancient Mesopotamia into different groups. We have courtyard gardens, temple gardens, city gardens, and hunting parks. She also mentioned the hanging gardens, but we are going to focus on those last. I want to start with the ones that are probably the most famous and surely the most abundant in Mesopotamian context. Those are the courtyard gardens. The courtyard gardens appear as a consequence of closed spaces. That is, the closed spaces within palaces and bigger houses. The houses of the mighty, of the powerful, of the wealthy. To learn about these ones, we are picking the example Daly herself chose. And this is a courtyard in a palace in Mari that was described around 1800s, like before Common Era. Is it 1800? Yeah, 1800. It was called the Court of Palms. And I don't have an image of it. I'm really sorry. But it does give this name, give us some information beforehand. The garden had some walkways made of baked brick that were raised above the ground to keep them free from summer dust and from winter mud, so it could be walked without problems at any moment. And the kings of Mari used the garden to feast, and it was maintained by professional gardeners. So a garden tender was a profession, it was a job, at least at the point in time. And what we know is that these courtyards dedicated almost exclusively, at least these ones in Mari, were almost exclusively dedicated to palm trees. And these trees, alongside with the garden tender like Bob, shut up, nosotros! No. What was I saying? Oh yeah, that these courtyards, these orchards where palm trees grew, were symbols of power and status. And here, literature comes to play, and we find excerpts of the Epic of Gilgamesh that praise the city of Uruk by addressing the never-ending orchards of palm trees it had. Then we have another courtyard garden at Ugarit, and Ugarit is in the shores of what today is Syria. And according to archaeologists, there were flowers and shrubs that were most likely cultivated there. And let me show you another picture. I have a zoom in at one of Assurbanipal's reliefs that has a lot of plants, but it's not this one. It's this one. Palm trees! I read here just to type my love for Phoenix dactylifera. I see that kind of information Aina is providing. You must not expect it from me. But can you see the palm tree in the center of this picture? They were a big deal. And there's one element that is key to understand the importance of the garden as a symbol of status, especially the courtyard garden type. And that is, surprise, surprise, the tree. Yes, I know, quite shocking. But do you remember what I was saying about the context before? Why could possibly trees be so relevant and importantly revered? Why would they even occupy a space of significance in the Mesopotamian Garden? What do you think that is? Any ideas? It's actually a very nice tea. No? Well, it was because very few trees were natural to these territories. I do not mean that there were no trees at all, but the autochthonous species were not that many in the marshes of the Fatty Crescent. And this is the reason why importing trees, having trees display at your palace courtyard, was a symbol of your wealth, your influence, your power. Trees were especially important in Mesopotamian mythology as well, so much so that it was personified, the tree was personified as a deity, Ningishida, translated as the trusty tree. Trees provided shade, nourishment, materials, and being able to bring the most exotic species to your garden and display them there for the world to see certainly was a powerful argument in favor of someone else's status in society. The private courtyard gardens, according to Patrick, aimed to imitate those where the deities were thought to live. Because if you are the king, you deserve a residence worth of your presence, don't you think? Moreover, in these gardens, there was a minimized version of the outside world, compressed. And this is very, very important to understand. In these gardens, how to explain this? I think those are words that work. Imagine the outside world compressed in a square at your own house. That's what the garden was for the Assyrians. At least for the Assyrians, I'm saying. Here's how the drill was. Within the city walls, especially within the palace walls, there was a civilized world. The educated, more refined, organized world that was directly opposed to the outside, to whatever was not included inside those cities. And yes, I'm talking about all the cultures and all the societies and all the empires, but we're going to leave those aside. Exactly, Aina. The garden works as a microcosmos. She knows so much. Go follow her, all of you. Because this world outside the city walls, that butcher was chaos, disorder, madness. And bringing a tiny place of that outside world to your very home, to the core of your personal privacy, that was a thing. That was an act. The audacity, butcher. Because not only you ruled upon your civilized empire, you were able to contain a space that tamed this wilderness and its beasts. And that spoke quite eloquently about which type of king you were. Just imagine the amount of symbolic power these courtiers had. It is something, if you ask me, very impressive, very, very interesting. I'm going to show you the other part of this relief. This is in the North Palace in Nineveh. And since we're talking about power, we need to talk about him. I am captivated by the explanation. Now I want my own garden. You know what? You are a king, therefore you deserve your own garden. That's for certain, Greenie. Here, enjoying, we're going to call it a refreshment because you know how Twitch is Azerbaijan in the North Palace of Nineveh, accompanied by his queen, at least one of them, and you can see how they are sitting on the the vine leaves. It just completely escaped my mind, the name of the plant. You see the vine leaves hanging all over them. You can see the grapes too. You can see the palm tree. Closer to me is a palm tree, and the other tree with the branches sort of twisting upwards, like imitate clouds. Not clouds, claws. I have no idea what those are. I'm really sorry. Aina, any ideas with those trees flanking the space? You know, the trees that are delimiting where the king and the queen are. With the, I don't want to say sharp because they're not sharp exactly, but you know, the pointy branches. They look. This is a guess. For God's sake, do not take this as like a proper explanation. But they're in the outsides, you know, the outwards shape. It's really similar to those that we find in Iran, cypresses. And just saying, could be. I don't know. Like Aina is the expert. And Aina, Azizam, if you have a moment to just identify those trees. I should have brought her here with me. If only. Of course, but let's not forget the other uses the garden inside the palace could have. Apart from displaying symbolism, they could be there to be enjoyed in feasts. Like, for example, here in the Shahnameh, it's always cypresses. Yes, but we're not in Iran anymore. This is Fatty Crescent, and cypresses are of certain importance, but they do not compare to the respect and no, they do not compare to Iran. Oh, I see. I'll check. Could drop words like gymnosperms, but I'll check close-ups. I have no idea. I know. I would be very happy if it was a cypress tree. You know how happy that would make me. But honestly, I don't know. I trust your judgment like I trust no one in this world. Go. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, like in these relief here, we can see how the garden was used to be enjoyed in feasts, music session, walks, and also people could be very well fond of nature, interested in the natural world, and they just like going for a stroll there. True. Well, the thing is, those testimonies do not remain in sources so often. We have scattered mentions, though. If the garden is green, we already have migraines inside. Cedar is also for Lebanon. Yeah, oh, yes, I know that. But what I meant is that, first, I don't know exactly what those trees are because their identification is a little bit complicated, at least for me. I can identify the palm tree and the vine leaves quite easily, but those escape my knowledge. And they were cedar wood, and there was cedar wood, and there were cypresses in those gardens. And the tree in the right, I think it's a date. It's similar to the ones in ancient Egypt art. Yeah, this is a palm date. Yeah, that's that one. That is the only one we got. Can you see the dates actually like sprouting from the trunk and hanging just below the level of the leaves? It's really interesting how these reliefs show the different textures the trees had. If you look at the tree, you can see the trunk is rendered in a way, then the dates are completely different, and the leaves have these stripes that more like slimmer and more elegant. Oh, thank you for that subscription. Perrete is your second month in a row supporting the channel. Thank you so much. Highly appreciated. Ooh, and one last thing I found interesting about these private gardens is their sexual connotation. Can I say that on Twitch? The erotic connotation of the seductive, inciting to reproduction connotation. I please Twitch, do not ban me. I'm trying to explain something here. Yeah, whatever. This, my friend La Mythologa, she does a better job than I do in saying this. Since gardens, all right, hear me out. I swear I'm not making this up. Since gardens could be interpreted as a symbol of fertility in literature, the metaphors explained the masculine genitals as the tool that plowed the feminine genitals that were a wetland ready for seeds. Thus, the male would be called a gardener. And that apparently was a trope that drove people mad back in the day. Yeah, the stereotypical hot as hell gardener pouring water over their naked torso is not something that telenovelas invented. It was already a thing in Mesopotamian literature. What were the odds? We do believe ourselves so creative and we have invented nothing, let me tell you that. Work around in the censorship, like I'm trying. Stupid and sensual palm trees. Please Twitch doesn't saw me. This is a class. I'm trying to teach something here. Let's just move on, like a little bit. The Coke light got an hour and oh my god, that advertisement, the one for Diet Coke. Oh my god, it just came. It was very well hidden in my memory, but my vizier was in charge of bringing it back. Wow. I certainly did not need that. We're going to move on. This is a drawing that Auguste Layard made in the 19th century of the gardens in Nineveh. And now we're going to see another type of... Oh, actually, I'm going to show this one. It's really beautiful. But actually, we're going to go back to the lions. I have a drawing of the lions in case you... So this is the relief. And then we have a drawing of it in case you cannot see it exactly or properly. This is a drawing made by Stephanie Dahlia. Took it from her article and she made it herself. So I'm gonna leave that one here because of their closeness to the courtyards. Now we are going to talk about the hunting parks. I'm not going to extend too much on this since there's already a video I made speaking about the Assyrian royal lion hunt. Sacerdotisa or Nosirros, I don't know if you can post that one on the chat box. This is one of the few videos that's edited from back in the day when I had time and I cared for editing the videos. Not that it's gonna happen anymore, but that I made a video talking about the Assyrian royal lion hunt. But basically, the gardens were large enough and long enough that they could accommodate a number of animals that were considered like trees, exotic and luxurious. Those flowers are usually classified as Madonna Lilies, Lilium candidum, very perfumed. Which ones? The ones that appear to be sprouting from the lioness back? Or the one that's at the very left of the drawing with a very long neck. My terminology. I know my plant terminology. Beth left. Oh, right, you're correct. I haven't seen the one like behind the male lion. Ooh, how are they called again? Long-stalked. Yeah, you know how much I know about plants. Nothing. Madonna Lilies. I was gonna make a very bad joke about some song by Madonna and the flowers, but I'm gonna skip it because you deserve to be happy in this world. So yeah, animals. You know I love plants, and you know I am. This one Pets in Mesopotamia. No, it's called the Assyrian Royal Lion Hunt. Like that, it's like it's very often, but very back in the day. It was from my first year on Twitch, so you can imagine how old that is. So yeah, as I said, these gardens, the private gardens, could be so enormous and large that they could host and contain a variety of species. And I'm not just talking one of them, not just a pair, not just 3 casual animals. No, I'm talking about flocks of birds. I'm talking about packs of animals. Yeah, like That was the thing. And what kind of animals we could see there? For example, we have predators like lions, leopards. We could also see sometimes, not so often, dogs, but be like going about and around. Garden menagerie. Yeah, that one, Nosotros. Thank you so much. So also gazelles, deer, wild horses, ibexes, team ibex forever. And people collected them. People collected animals because animals were so valued, highly deemed as an exotic luxury, that they were often gifts from lesser kings, from embassies to the Assyrian kings. We have testimonies of gardens that had crocodiles, apes, hippos, and of course, pelicans. I do not understand why anyone would be interested in keeping a pelican. I do not understand why anybody would consider a pelican to be a luxurious, status-granting animal, because they are the dumbest birds on the surface of Earth. I do adore them. They're my favorite. But they're stupid. They're not the smartest tool in the box. I was the sharpest tool in the box. What is it? The smartest? They're not smart. And possibly I am not either, because that's the reason I like pelicans. I think they resonate with me quite a lot. So yeah, we're talking just tiny private zoos. We're talking there. Then we have the city gardens. Those belong to the public sphere. And I'm going to go back here to the drawing by... there we have it. Just a moment. Streamlabs is calling something. Oh yeah, this is the drawing that Flandin made in the 19th century as well in Nineveh. Yes, in his palace of Dur Sharukin. I think I said before that Dur Sharukin and Nineveh were not the same thing, and I'm completely wrong in there. Because I do make mistakes too. Just let me quickly look for it. All right, so we have the Dur Sharukin is in Khorsabad, and then we have Nineveh, which is like, all right, they're 20 kilometers apart. That was what I remembered. They're not the same place, but they're very close in distance. So first, Sargon, the Assyrian king, established a capital in Dur Sharukin, that's now in current Khorsabad. Hello, Alva! Are you feeling better? I'm very happy that you're here. And then when Sargon passed away, the capital was moved to Nineveh, which is 20 kilometers south. Did it make any sense? Because I was looking at the map. All right, so Khorsabad is here, Dur Sharukin, and then we have here Nineveh. They're not the same place. I was not wrong when I said it first. And but yeah, these ones in Nineveh. So I had an image or so, I believe, of the drawing. No, because this is from Nineveh as well. I thought I had an image from the... Have you in the background while crocheting? That's such a nice activity to do. I didn't know you could crochet. I thought I had a drawing from the palace garden, from the public garden in Dur Sharukin, but no, I don't. My mistake. But yeah, we're going to talk about the city gardens because, yeah, surprise, there were public gardens, public city spaces. The example used to explain these spaces, we find in the sources from the reign of King Ashurnasirpal II between 883 and to 859. That's the reign of Ashurnasirpal II. And he created a system that would bring water from the mountains to irrigate his capital in Nimrud. He himself lists all the plants he took from the far corners of the world. And here we have examples. I know you're listening. We have pine trees, cypresses, hopefully from it out, wink, wink, and junipers, almond trees, olive trees, tamarisks, pomegranate trees. That must have been quite a sight. So beautiful. But more interestingly is that by that time, not all the trees were exclusively brought from distant lands to the capital. Nah, tree trade, which is something very fun to say, tree trade was definitely a thing and quite a flourishing business in the Assyrian Empire. And this is one of the gardens that Sargon built, and you can see there's a pavilion standing in the middle of the water. I don't know if you can see them properly, but just about underneath the pavilion there's some fish, and a little bit below there's some boats, and then to the right we have a hill topped with a structure and entirely covered by trees with some birds. I don't know what kind of trees those are, but you can see different trees represented. Those on the hill are different from those on the upper level above the pavilion, and they are similar to those by the, I'm guessing, gods, or just two men standing there. And I am no botanist, so I cannot venture what they are. But the fact that artists notice the difference is very interesting, at least to me. Like they were aware that the trees look different, and they made an effort to represent them differently. Isn't our history marvelous? Oh, moreover, years later, Sargon's heir, Sennacherib, he would build an artificial swamp inspired by all the gardens the king had seen in Babylonia. A swamp. Completely artificial. Because he liked it and he wanted one. Speaking of Babylon, no, I'm gonna get there in a minute. Before addressing the thing, I want to talk about the gardens with religious significance. Stephanie Daly called them the temple gardens. They are connected with the thing I'm going to say next. Temple courtyards were used like palace courtyards, and the gardens were served for religious processions or to enhance the beauty of the temple that, after all, was a deity's house. I'm not talking about Ziggurats. I love this stream. I'm hoping she can tune in on Thursday. But yeah, she and Aina are the main inspiration behind this topic. And do not think about Ziggurats. We're going to get there. Just imagine a temple with an inside courtyard. Sometimes on the temples, they were built imitating patterns from nature, like having columns recreating tree trunks, for example. This is something we also see in Egypt very, very often. And let me tell you something, about the Ziggurats. Have you heard about them? The main Mesopotamian religious construction. Do you know the Ziggurats, right? Have you ever heard, or are you familiar with them being covered with gardens and plants? Is that something you've ever heard? The floors, the stories of these buildings, the terraces, were actually filled with gardens. And I'm going to say more. Have you ever seen something similar to these in some recreations of said Ziggurats? Or perhaps something like this? You've heard about that, right? Like Ziggurats were supposedly covered in gardens and plants. Well, that's fake news, I am afraid. Let me explain what happened. There was a person called Sir Leonard Woolley, and he was in charge of excavating Ur, the city of Ur. And the Ziggurat there was in pretty good condition. Something like this in Eternals was the best part. Oh yeah, they have something like that. They have the Gate of Ishtar in Eternals. But I cannot remember if they were explicitly saying that they were in a ziggurat or in a palace. Because if it was a ziggurat, it was completely off. So this ziggurat at Ur was in a very good condition, and the structure was brick. Inside there was mud brick, and there was an outer case of baked bricks that were regularly perforated by holes that made Woolley think those were irrigating canals for watering plants. But that was quite off. The hole's function was to allow the brick to dry properly and preventing the whole ziggurat from collapsing. So no gardens, no trees, nothing remotely similar. Also, this shows Sir Woolley was not exactly an expert on botany, because there are so many risks on growing plants, especially large plants. We're talking trees in here, on top of a mud brick tower. And we should not forget about the supply. It would have been almost impossible for it to be true to create a system for water going upwards to provide the palace with, the ziggurat with water. I really like this recreation that I saw on National Geographic, because in here you can actually see the gardens, the palace gardens. This first structure we have, this is Babylon, I think. Yes, I think the one in the back is Etemenanki. You see the entrance, the palace with the gardens, where the gardens were, and on the back you see the ziggurat completely naked, empty. There was no gardens on the ziggurats. But what happened? Orientalism happened. This is where we hit the sweet, gorgeous Orientalism. The imagination of these gardens was so powerful that they lit the fire once again of the architectonical myth best known to the ancient world, that is the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I cannot put the quotes more intensely. So what happened? After Woolley saying and writing about how these ziggurats were covered in gardens, there is a problem of translation here. And this is the word, hanging garden. Because in English, hanging something implies a downwards movement. This is hanging from my fingers. This pen is hanging from my fingers. So that implies that it grows from here downwards in this movement. However, the name that we find in Greek sources is kremastos. That means overhanging, and that has a broader meaning than the modern English is hanging. And what it meant is that trees were planted on a raised structure, like a terrace, but it does not mean that they were hanging. They were just, terrace systems. And this is pure legend, absolute legend, because and I'm just laughing because I really like this, because this legend was built upon confusion, and for sure, there were impressive gardens in Mesopotamia, and my life was a lie. I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid it was. Sorry. So, all right, how to explain it? I need to really think of the words. You know how the Hanging Gardens were supposedly one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it is gathered in many sources from antiquity. Greek authors, Roman authors that keep on repeating the same and the same and the same. They sometimes say that it was built alongside a palace that was known to the marvel of mankind by a Babylonian king. Because there was King Nebuchadnezzar II built it for his Median wife. Hello, Median Kingdom. And because this Queen Amitis, she missed her homeland, and he made this garden for her. Yet has also been attributed to the legendary Queen Semiramis, and there's so much written about this supposed wonder that is not true. And first of all, we don't have a proper location established because nothing remotely similar has been found on Babylon, on the archaeological site of Babylon. Nothing. Like there's no evidence of it. And there are 3 theories that I'm going to read to you about what happened. First of all, we have that the gardens were purely a myth. They were purely mythical. And the description that we find in the Greek and Roman sources, we are talking about Strabo, Diodorus of Sicilia, Quintus Curtius. There's like a million mentions to these gardens. And what this was is just an imagined representation of the ideal Oriental garden, because these were very famous. The gardens from these palaces were known and famous to all the people. But never think that the ancient world was encapsulated or isolated in what we can call cultural hubs. It was not. It was a world in communication. Certainly, it was not easy to be communicated as it is today, but there were no massive, giant walls or holes or voids preventing one culture from reaching the other. And these gardens were a very big deal for the ancient world. So it could be that it was just a mythical garden. Then another possibility stated by the scholars is that they existed. There were some gardens in Babylon, but they were completely destroyed at some point during the 1st century Common Era. And thirdly, which is what I think is more possible, this is a theory that Stephanie Daly herself supports. There's a confusion here, because the gardens, if existing, were not at Babylonia. They were not at Babylon. They were at Nineveh in Assyria, and they belonged to King Sennacherib in a city near the modern Mosul, in what currently is Iraq. So how did this happen? How could they be confused? If they were, because we have very well documented gardens constructed by this Assyrian king, by Sennacherib, and these were at the palace of Nineveh. We've seen them, how Assurbanipal afterwards just enlarges those gardens. These were the ones I'm talking about. I'm going to show you the whole thing. Hello, Naim June. How are you, Zizam? Yeah, I'm afraid it's not working. I will say it. The Streamlabs is not working. I'm trying to do 2 things at the same time. So these are the gardens we are talking about that Sennacherib constructed, and that they were like first Assurbanipal bit them, and then Sennacherib took use of them, and these were there, and then these gardens were attributed to, I'm laughing for a reason, these gardens were attributed to the palace in Babylon. And why is that? Mainly because the ancient writers of Greek and Roman sources, they didn't know exactly where Babylon was, and they did not know exactly where Nineveh was. So to speak, in a very casual way, they kind of thought it didn't matter, because there was, there, the Fertile Crescent, it was somewhere there. It didn't really matter. And in fact, I'm just there's some arguments Stephanie Daly gives herself. And first of all, Babylon means gate of the gods, and many cities shared this name. And the city gates of Nineveh were named after the gods, so maybe there was a confusion there. And there's also not just okay. So I'm sorry for the confusion. The gardens, even though they belong to Sennacherib, they were attributed not only to Babylon, but also to King Nebuchadnezzar. And there's only one source that explains that Nebuchadnezzar built these gardens, which he didn't. It was Sennacherib. And they call the Assyrian king Syrian king, and they keep on repeating descriptions, but they do not exactly mention sources because, history was made very differently back in the day. And then Assurbanipal is the one who pictured the garden and put all these reliefs up. And Assurbanipal is the grandson of Sennacherib. I think I said it wrong before. Oh my, I think I said something like Assurbanipal came before and then it was Sennacherib. No, Sennacherib is the grandfather of Assurbanipal. I'm really sorry if I'm sounding confusing. Are you holding up all right? Like, can you follow properly? Because it's a little bit, I understand how it's a little bit confusing, this one, but I wanted to explain you the reasons the scholars believe this confusion was such. So Sennacherib's palace and his gardens were described as a wonder for the peoples, as something amazing to contemplate, or calling to contemplate. And interestingly enough, the description of the classical sources matches the description from Sennacherib's point of view when he's describing his own gardens. So at some point, they could have been records that reproduced those descriptions. And they got confused. They just got it very much confused. And someone believed that those gardens belonged to Babylon. And to me, this is very interesting because it shows how just, how to say this, how these archetypes, these ideas keep on traveling all the time. We're talking about millennia. This legend has been on for thousands of years. And only quite recently we started to realize that there were no hanging gardens in Babylon. Definitely not. But we still keep saying that. And I've seen still even games where you play. Do you know a board game called Seven Wonders? It's based on the Seven Wonders of the Ancient World, and the gardens of Babylon are there, beautiful and very colorful. And so that's how much the stereotype is ingrained into a system and how much we believe for certain this legend. I've seen some articles, of course, the one from National Geographic showing that. I'm going to show you the reproduction of Babylon again because I think it's a very good one. Here. This is very nice because you can see, again, the palace, the gardens, and then on the back you can see the temple, Etemenanki, the Babel Tower. And to me, the most interesting thing when researching this, when preparing this to show it to you, is that Greek or Roman authors just were very confused about where things were. And they considered that there was no harm in just saying, yeah, no, there was a city there. It might have been Babylon, but it might not. Not that we care about that. It's just they were reproducing this idea of an ideal garden. I don't mean this out of harm. I'm pretty sure that they didn't mean in a detrimental way. Absolutely not. It's not a way of making fun of anything. It's just like a way of reproducing something you've heard that you consider magnificent, this idea, this conception you have of the otherness in the Orient, and you reproduce it because you want to. Not necessarily in a detrimental way, but I think it's super interesting how this was carried out and how to this day this stereotype of the Babylonian hanging garden stays. I think it's something beautiful. It teaches us that we're not so different, and there's always been misinformation, has always been around the corner. And at least I wanted to explain to you where this came from, why is it important, and if there were some hanging gardens, which after reading some theories, I do stand by Dali's opinion. I do believe that those gardens the Greek or Roman authors were referring to were not in Babylonia, they were in Nineveh, and they were the gardens of Sennacherib, ultimately enlarged by Assurbanipal, and the last king of the Assyrian Empire. And at some point, this information got very much confused. And I I wanted you to know where things and stereotypes and legends come from. And that is about today's stream. We've covered a large variety of topics. Sorry if it was a little bit more discursive and blabbery than usual. It made me feel better. I'm not feeling that headache anymore. And I'm very happy that I brought this to the table, because I know I didn't have many plans, but I did not enter into those studies because I read a lot about plants in Mesopotamia, and I didn't have the time I wanted to dedicate to it. It's a very difficult topic, and archaeobotanic is impressive, and I admire so much people that work on it, because it's so interesting seeing how the process is. I'll do no puns with plants, please don't. You're banned from doing that. It's really fascinating, the process and how the research goes around and how it develops and how they do discover what kind of plants were growing in a place from what to me, unexpert eyes for sure, is dust. I learned a lot of new things preparing this live stream. I did not know tree trade was a thing. I did not know people kept pelicans out their gardens. I did not know how big this could be, but it makes so much sense, because when I think of the gardens Cyrus had at Pasargada, at the first capital of Cyrus the Great, they were so large when you compare the scale of them to the nearby buildings. And you see how huge those gardens were, and you think, hang on, what possibly could they want these gardens for? It's so big. This is not a garden. It's like, wow, well, it was a little stew for animals, for exotic plants, and most importantly, gardens just emanate this essence of power, of status, of significance, that I just had to bring them to you. I'm very happy now you know there were no hanging gardens in Babylon. If anything, they were in Nineveh. And I'm really happy I brought this to you. I'm very happy that my patrons chose it. And that is what we're gonna do. That's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, like always. If you want a little bit more of these live streams, you can come to next Monday's stream. You can stay for a little bit in our little community in here. It's been my biggest pleasure. Thank you for tuning in with me. And there's no to. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something you didn't know. See you next time. Oh, I hope you comment next time. That would make me so happy. And thank you so much for tuning in with me. I'll join the Spanish room on Thursday to learn more about interesting topic. Thank you, Azizam. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really liked researching this. And you know the drill with context, and you know the drill with. Do you like my Eva mug? You know Eva from WALL-E? She's my spirit animal. You know the drill. Create, explore, and have a lot of fun. Until I see you next time, I bid you Khodafis!